say in Hackney, that I don't remember facing any street racism. I don't know about institutional, I was too much of a kid, but definitely in Harrow, in teachers, the attitudes, the immigration laws. And if one of your parents wasn't born in this country, you had to stand up. So it was the Irish Polish girl who became my friend. She had to stand up, I had to stand up. And we knew it was wrong. And we were what? We were still in what was called primary school. We were 9, maybe 9 or 10, and just before going to high school. And that was it. And she protested, and we knew it was wrong to be singled out like that because they were asking school teachers to note down whose parents, and that you can do that in a subtle way. You can ask each kid privately. And being put in an English as a second language class, there was no understanding of bilingualism, let alone multilingual teaching or anything in this borough. It was really awful. Very few Asians, very few Afro-Caribbean people. And there was a lot of jingoism and a lot of nationalism as well. Huge amounts of nationalism about being British. And it was, yeah, you think about the newspapers, the television, it was so racist. There was that stupid programme, Mind Your Language, which didn't reflect our lives. Yeah, it was pretty awful in many ways. But on the other hand, there was Star Trek. There was the idea of sci-fi and the fact that there were protests happening as well. Then the big Grunwick strike happened in London of '76, and that was just all over the news. And it was beaming into our television screens, whatever, in our front room. So that was pretty startling and momentous to see that actually on television for so long. And I think by the time Thatcher came along, again, things had changed. If we think about the Race Relations Act of 1976 and the impact that had a big impact for people's lives. Plus, you had legal aid then, so people were actually taking cases to court. So things were shifting. I suppose it depends. Like if you think about, say, young Bengalis in the East End, that's a different story to say Southall. And if you think about what happened in Southall with the uprisings, and kicking, that was so significant in the early '70s to have that happening. They kicked the National Front out, and that community said, we're not going to tolerate this. And it was much wider. And you think about what happened in Toxteth and Brixton. I think the first one was St Paul's in Bristol, so people were just saying we've had enough. I mean, it was police harassment, all sorts of stuff. When you think about the SPG, the Special Patrol Group, and how they used to pick up young men, Asian and Afro-Caribbean. I mean, it wasn't just Afro-Caribbean young men they picked up. The idea of punk played a big part as well, and post-punk, the attitude, the politics. I was trying to find people who were similar to me. A young guy came up to me and said, do you fancy setting up a theatre company and stuff? It's the attitude. So suddenly a whole host of people who were like-minded opened up for me, and I got involved in things like Southall Monitoring Group, Southall Black Sisters, all that sort of stuff. And I was already going to protest outside the South African Embassy as a kid with my mum, so that continued as well. And it was, the rest is history.